Where did you like to play as a child? I ask this question a lot because childhood memories shape us into the people we become. Welcome to Play It Forward, a Wearthy podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Ritson. Thanks so much for joining me. I talk a lot about play. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an educator, and I'm a playground designer. So I wanted to gather some of my favourite people who are advocates of children and nature and create a space to have an honest conversation about getting more kids outside. The power of play is very often underestimated, and I think we all need a little more play in our lives.
Our next guest is someone I had the honour of standing alongside on the TEDx stage in Brisbane earlier this year. She is a music therapist with 18 years experience in paediatric healthcare and has worked intensively in intensive care and palliative care. She believes that music provides a meaningful connection with the dying child, and the death of the child should be one of dignity and love. Her TEDx talk named Dying Young in the Arms of Music moved many people to tears, a must watch that we'll put in the show notes. Please welcome onto the Wearthy podcast the incredible, loving, empathetic Maggie James.
Hello, Lukas.
Thanks for joining us all the way from Montreal.
Yes, definitely. Won't miss it.
Well, we'll start off with how we start all our podcasts. Where did you like to play as a child?
My favorite area to explore or to play, and my earliest memory about playing with other kids or going out to play, it's a very unusual area. It's not it's not a playground, it's not a park, but it's 4 corridors that are communal corridors within the apartment complex that I lived in. So when I was little, we lived in an apartment complex in Hong Kong that each apartment complex have more than hundreds of units, and each floor has 4 corridors that share by all apartments, and all the kids every afternoon will come out together and hang out and run around and chase each other along the 4 corridors. There were no play equipments. It's us kids with our imagination. And still to today, it's still my absolute favorite memories.
That's such a unique experience. How was that play perceived by the other tenants?
Yeah, you do get a lot of mums and dads shout out, "Come on, it's dinner time!" or don't chase our kids. Why are you crying? Like, there's a lot of shouting, but that's just part of kids. But also the other thing is all the other parents, because on our floor there were 20 other families. Wow. So every family's, all the parents look after each other's kids. So if my mum and dad running late, coming home, and grandma and granddad's not ready for dinner, the other mum's ready for dinner, she might call out, "Maggie, do you want dinner tonight? Here, I'll call your mum and let her know." And then you'll just go to someone else for dinner until bath time. Then your mum would drag you back, and it's fantastic. It's wonderful.
The true village to raise a child.
Yes, definitely.
And what did your journey look like from the corridors of Hong Kong to being in Australia to finding yourself in the field of music therapy?
Well, I think having a Chinese background, play it looks very different. I didn't have that much toys when I was little, and I was actually talking to my husband tonight that when I was young, like looking in our my girls' playroom, there's loads of toys that I was saying to him that when I was little, I only have one tri bike. That's all I had. And look at them, they've got like so many things. But I guess, looking back then, when you only had so minimal, you have to be creative. And I think that creativity started from when I was young, because you didn't have much. So you use your imagination, you use, tapping on the stairs, on the bars of the rail, and jumping up and down, dancing along to songs that you make up. I guess that's probably paved a way of how I became a music therapist and probably where I got my creativity from.
So you followed that path of music from an early age all the way through your studies.
Definitely. I think I'm very blessed that from a very young age, my parents could see that I have a love, or you can also say a gift of music. My parents blessed me with piano lessons from the age of 2. So from a very young age, I just loved making up songs, and I love using songs to make people happy. So that's probably something that I know that's innate in me, using music to connect. And I think through that, throughout the years when I grow up, I have always had music in my life, whether it's learning piano or flute, singing, guitar, saxophone, violin, all those instruments. I like to give it a go.
Yeah.
And I think from then I lead to in my university, when I had to choose what I want to do, within music, there's not that many options. So I was trying to pick between being a performer, being a pianist, or a music teacher, or something else. And I remember in the first year of university, I still didn't know about music therapy. So I went into the path of being a pianist. So I was doing lots of long hours of playing, and I feel very disconnected from the world. And when I was little, it's all about using music to connect. So I felt that there was something missing, a huge component of my meaning of using music or enjoying music's gone. So I've looked into, okay, well, what career that I can do that I would be able to use my tool, which is music, to connect. I did explore, obviously, the most typical path, which is a music educator. Yes, you can connect, but connect through teaching, it still didn't sit right with me. So I came across music therapy. And I remember I spent a month with a music therapist that I was volunteering my time to be her helper. And I watched the power of music through her, how she used music to connect with children that are intellectually disabled or physically disabled. And I saw these children from being very dysregulated and frustrated, sitting in a group, to very calm, as well as joyful. It's like there was a key opened their door, that all the potentials came out. Those that were not talking started singing and tapping along to beats to music. And I was just fascinated. And from then on, I decided that, I've got to make this as my lifelong career. So I went and did study music therapy, and and then got my first job at the Royal Children's Hospital in Queensland, which is now the Queensland Children's Hospital.
It's amazing. And for those listeners are going, well, you're going on about music therapy. What is music therapy, for those listeners that don't know?
Oh, that's a very good question. Music therapy, it's basically using music as a tool that therapeutically address specific emotional, physical, psychological, and social goals. So what I mean by that is music becomes our vehicle. As any registered music therapist would have completed their master study in Australia or in other countries, would know that, once you receive the referral or a child that you need to meet to see them, you'll start to do an assessment to find out, okay, well, how can we use music to enhance the areas that need to be improved? So some of them could be, like when I talk about physical, I could be talking about strengthening their muscles with fine motor skills, or using their hands. So if I'm talking about young children, because that's my area, so using their hands to grasp onto the shaker and using simple music playing to strengthen each of their muscles group in their hands. Or it can be communication goals. So for example, children with a speech impairment, we use singing, we use humming, we use anything that activate our vocal cords through music, making clicking sound, anything that create an opportunity for a musical play to achieve their vocal output. So that's how we maximize the communication goals. So I guess music therapy is not focusing on, I'm going to teach them how to count. It's not so much about the educational outcome, but it's more about the developmental, emotional, and social outcomes.
Yeah, it's for me, really, as an overview, seems like it's about creating a being state, not so much a doing state.
Yes, the process.
Yeah, and it's not something that's new age for those listeners. It's not something that's just recent. This has been around, like the first research coming out in the 1800s around this, and even further back. Even it's mentioned in the Bible about music soothing the soul of stress and anxious.
That's right.
It's been around a long time, and I think everyone innately knows that music, soothes the savage beast, if you will. But what's happening in now? Why are we so drawn to it?
I guess, like you said, that it's not new, but it's also something that I think people can naturally feel at ease when you listen to music. So it kind of, you've got this intuition that, oh yes, music equals to good. And in the age of, I beg your pardon, in the age of now that we're trying to explore holistic therapy input, because I want to say away the word alternative, because I don't believe music therapy is alternative. It's more holistic approach, and there are lots of evidence and scientific evidence as well. So I think the reason I feel why there's so many more awareness also with social media, it brings a lot of people's looking for ways that they can actually make themselves feel good, that they can do at home, that they can do in their fingertips, and I think that's why, I love your question, what is music therapy? Because I think that what we do every day is using music as a form of therapy, which is different to music therapy. And I am a big believer that using music as a form of therapy is as important as music therapy itself. When I feel stressed, I also put on some music and actually make myself feel more at ease. And to me, that is using music to relax. It's not music therapy. And I think, when, obviously for all the listeners out there, if you feel stressed, definitely listen to music. But if you feel like, listening to music, it doesn't really work, a music therapist, how they can look into it is, well, analyze what sort of music that you're listening to. There's research that recently came out looking into teenagers listening to music when they feel sad. And they analyze what sort of music that they're listening to. The music that they're listening to that are positive are more likely to lift the mood, decrease their heart rate, therefore they feel more settled, and improve their oxygen saturation, and therefore that they're more opening up to allow blood circulation. Whereas when they're listening to more sad, and including the lyrics and the music more leaning towards the sadness, their physical status decrease, their oxygen saturation decrease, and their heart rates increase in a way that they feel anxious. Wow. So it's very important that it's not just music. It's not just, you can't just say that, oh, when you feel sad, go and listen to music. It's what type of music as well. Yeah,
and there's that tendency for people to leverage it in both directions, as you mentioned there. Like, you're feeling down, you're like, okay, I'm gonna wallow in this. I'm gonna put on that sadness and really go deep on it. And then it's only through going through that transition and acknowledging it, you can come out the other side for some people. So it can be like the both sides of the scale. And I think we see in society this intrinsic motivation to move towards music. Like in the gym this morning, I looked around with this podcast in mind, and like 99% of people have got headphones in. And I had that brief panic as I went to go into the gym this morning and realized my headphones weren't there. And then I'd have to listen to the amped up gym music. And I was like, I'm not sure I can go. It was really interesting because I've been reading about the music therapy and then going, okay, just observe where it is in my life. And that was a prime example just this morning, how I was so turned off by the thought of going in and being exposed to music that just did not align with me and where I'm at in my journey. So I can really push and pull you from a very, very emotional level. So there's music therapy from the emotional and the physical, and I encourage anyone to jump online and just Google like music therapy results or music therapy facts, and you can see video footage of people performing music with children as therapy and seeing monumental turnarounds in children from coming out of comas to doing rehabilitation. And you can physically see the children stop, like they're not engaged at all. The music starts and then they get, like you were saying, they get that smile on their face, they get that motivation to move towards that music, which is phenomenal. But you've also taken it to another realm, and you specialize in, as I mentioned in the introduction, in intensive care and palliative care. So for the listeners, can you break down, one, how you found yourself in that field and what it's all about?
I became a music therapist, back in 18 years ago. And when I first started, I was working in the rehabilitation unit. So where I was working mostly with children with acquired brain injury. And with the amazing medical technology and the treatment method at the moment, most of our children would be able to survive. But I've also met many that were not able to survive. And through working with those children during the times, this may sound weird, but I fell in love with the opportunities and the privilege in working with children that were dying. And I really felt connected, and I really felt there weren't many opportunities for these children to experience joy and fun before they die. So I really feel a strong pull into this area, and that's how I've started. And I met with the director of intensive care back then at the Royal Children's Hospital and proposed the idea of working with children in intensive care, especially in supporting children who are in palliative care. So children, whether they are born with a life-limiting conditions or whether suddenly, unfortunately, with an illness or accident, they were not expected to live for very long. And I was very lucky that I was granted with 3 years funding to work in this area, and that was back in 2009, I think. And since then it was just going and non-stop. And and also through that journey I also went and studied neurologic music therapy and became a neurologic music therapist, because obviously, like you said, we know that there's something great and fun and lovely. Well, it's more than that. I believe that there must be something that's happening up the brain area. So I went into study and explore, well, neurologically, how does that work? Especially when a brain that's dying, because a lot of the areas in the brain would slowly shut down. Well, what is the role of music in our brain then, especially when a child's brain is shutting down? And I think all those elements just fascinated me. And then that's how I started the journey, became a paediatric palliative care music therapist.
And during your TED talk, and as we said, we'll put in the notes, it wasn't just the child that was a recipient of this music therapy. You've got some great examples of this really helping parents during this traumatic time as well.
Obviously, you know, a child is always will come with the family unit.
Yeah.
So when you work with a child, you can't separate the parents, and you must. Like, I would never want to separate the parents anyway. So we, you know, when I'm delivering music therapy, or when I'm in the sessions doing music therapy with the child, I would always involve and invite the parents to be part of it, because at the end of the day, music therapy is not just for the child, it's for the family. What the child needed the most is the love of their parents. So it is about using music to connect and bond everyone that's in the room, whether it's one last time or whether it is, you know, it's a very long goodbye. So because some children, when they become palliative, it can be a very long journey as well. One of the longest journey that I have had with a child was 10 years. He became palliative when he was 1. And he was very lucky that he was able to enjoy life and pass away when he was 10. So it could be a very long journey. It's about using music to build memories with the parents, with the child.
And what does that practice look like? What's the practice that you're performing?
So usually when we met a child with the parents, we ask them what kind of music that they like to listen to, because like you said, you know, when you go to the gym, it doesn't align with what you love. It's like, oh, I feel disconnected. I don't want any part of it anyway. So we always ask the parents, you know, what does their child like to listen to, whether it's Paw Patrol music or whether it's Wiggles, or you know, some really trick us to tell us that they love AC/DC, and you just go, okay, yep, I'll try to do that. I'll try to bring AC/DC in this extremely inappropriate forum. You know, especially a lot of the time I would be singing before the child take the last breath, and you just feel highly inappropriate singing Ice Ice Baby. But that's what they want.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not about me, it's about the parent and the child. So what that looks like, usually, you know, like I said, ask the parents what they really normally like, and I often meet the patient and the parents or grandparents, whoever that wants to be part of it can come. In the intensive care unit, where the child, most of my patients are not conscious. They will be on a life support with, you know, breathing tubes and or anything that attached to them. So I often bring my guitar and some small instruments in case if, you know, some of my patient may be still aware and awake, then they can join in if they want. So after we know and work out what sort of music that the parents and the child usually like to listen to, we often start with checking with the medical team as to what direction we're heading. So some days when I go into a patient's room, the medical team might give me a hint that, you know, today's a good day. You know, little baby Johnny's in good shape, and it looks like that we're having a happy day. So let's do something fun. Then I would know that the music that I bring, when I bring, is when I sing and when play on my guitar would be a bit more upbeat. A bit more playful. It's about using music to provide an opportunity to play, to have fun. And for not younger kids, for older kids like teenagers, sometimes it'll be like, okay, you know, we've got the breathing tube out, we're talking today. So do you want to write a song together? Do you want to record a song, make a CDs? Some teenagers that I used to work with, they would want to leave behind their legacy, writing songs. So we'll compile, you know, lots of songs that they write and record together. And so it really dictated by, not by the medical team, but dictated by the child's status of the day. So some days if the medical team give us a heads up that, you know, we're not really heading to a good direction, we may be down to hours or days. So that would be when I go in tentatively to check in where the parents want to take the direction. You know, do they just want to do something gentle? Then I maybe just be their by their bedside singing their favorite songs. Or sometimes it may be just sitting by next to them and holding their hands and wait for them to have their awake moment and ask the patient what they want to do. Usually, because most of my patients would be nonverbal because of the breathing tube, I always have, you know, other material for them to sign on the board or write on the board or point to pictures of what they want to do as well. So you need to find different ways of, you know, communication. And some days I go in, it may just be chatting with the parents. And in a TEDx talk that you mentioned, which was that when I was working with this little boy and his mum, and a lot of the time this little boy was asleep, obviously because he was so sick. And his mum and I started a project that we wrote a song together over the course of a few months for her little boy, which she sung to him as he passed away.
Big stuff, big impact. And just want to honor you for it takes a lot of bravery and vulnerability to put yourself in that situation. And hats off to you. Not many people could do it. And it's a great, noble task to be there and be vulnerable with families. How was the process received from like traditional medicine? Because I could draw the similarities between alternate approaches. Well, we know it's not an alternative approach, it's a proven approach, but that have generally a disconnect between the institution. So how was it received by the medical staff about you going in there, and any stories you got around their views?
I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. It was not easy, and I bet it's still not easy. Obviously, I'm on maternity leave at the moment. That's what I mean. I bet it's still not easy because I'm currently not practicing. I'm, looking after my kids. But it's not easy. It's not easy because I think it's not a quick fix. Therapy, it's not like taking Panadol. 99% your pain will go away.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It takes relationship, and so I think it also takes a lot of education. A lot of our doctors, obviously you become a doctor because you want to help. And I think it is about us as music therapists, how we actually explain to the doctor how we can help. Not just only by another person making someone smile. Unfortunately, in the medical system, when the medical system is financially so high cost, when being a music therapist, that the taxpayer is paying, it needs to be more than just joy, more than just fun. And I think that's the beautiful thing about music. Yes, we bring joy, we bring fun, but we also improve physical outcomes. Like I said earlier, it improves our oxygen saturation, it decreases our blood pressure, and all those things, all those physical numbers that I've mentioned, it also helps when a child is dying or when humans dying. We know that the latest research that published last year in June, that talks about that music, hearing is the last sense that human lost before they die. What that means is when our brain gradually shut down from the top down to our brain stem, everything slowly shut down. It's like turning off lights. Each lobe, each section of our brain slowly turning off lights, and then left with our brain stem. And music is still able to stimulate, and brain stem still able to respond to music. Our brain stem still able to respond to music until the very end, until our brain stem, which is the last piece of brain muscle that switch off the lights. So that's how powerful music is. It's not just making someone happy, fun, relax, but it is actually neurologically stimulating, engaging, and connecting with us, with our child until the very end. So it almost like, I feel like every time I work with a patient, I feel like I am using music to hold on to the hands until they let go, until their brain stem switch off. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we're able to offer as music therapists to children who are dying.
Yeah. For me, what comes to mind is creating peace in those times, you know, and not just for that child, but for the family as well.
Yes.
And I can see the parallels between what you do in a very intense environment, but there's similarities between education and early childhood education and things like this. And, you know, you're coming up, you're trying to portray this huge value to the child, but you're going up against something that isn't valued by the wider community. And it's what keeps you going, what keeps you motivated, saying, well, I'm keep going. I don't mind if people don't value it the way I do and see it the way I do. What is your driver in that?
Yeah, and I think that obviously I forgot that I didn't finish answering your question, you know, in getting the buy-in from the medical, and it kind of, that's the drive. And I think every time a doctor came up to question, you know, what are you doing? Like, you know, I've got a nurse to come in, wanting to come in to do you know, other things. You know, I could, instead of funding your position, I could have buy something else. Or I feel like, okay, no, you don't get it. And I think that's actually drives me. Try to make someone else understand, because I believe that if you can make that person understand, that person also becomes your champion. Not a champion for you, but champion for the future children who are unfortunately dying. And I think every time someone question or have doubts, I guess, I don't know, as I'm getting older, I feel like I'm trying to turn that into, hey, you're curious what I'm doing, I'll let you know. So instead of fighting against it, I feel like, okay, I'm going to get you buy-in. Like, I think I see it as more a positive challenge and turn that around, because I feel like throughout my 18 years in healthcare, back when in the days when I was working at the Royal Children's Hospital, at one point I was the only music therapist working 4 hours a week. And I was lucky enough, together with my team, with my manager, able to grow that position to become the largest music therapy team in the country. So I feel like I've experienced being alone and gradually grow my team. I really feel that, you know, working against it could see as so exhausting, but also it gives me energy and power that I can turn this around. And I think every time I meet a child that passed away and meet a family that passed away, when I see the peace, like you said, and the joy, it's weird to use the word peace and joy when we talk about death, but that's what I saw. That's what I experienced every time I met a family and able to offer music. That's what I could see. And I think that gives me the energy and the power that, you know, there is something good in this. And I really believe, and also, you know, the other thing that I was sharing in TEDx talk was working at the orphanage. When I was watching all these children that were dying in the room, there were 15 babies dying at the same time, that I just felt like that there's nothing that I could do for them but sing. And as soon as I start singing, I could see the change. Like every time when I feel exhausted or I feel someone's questioning me, then I just think of all these positive moments, and it just gives you the drive that I can't let this go. Every child should die with dignity and love. And that's what music can offer.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's monumental.
It's big, but it also such a beautiful thing. Palliative care is traumatic. It's sad. I personally experienced it with my family. I know no one wants to see their family go and die. But if music could offer that one hope, that letting me know that, my family members dying in the arms of comfort and peace, I would want that for my family.
And you had some, you connect with families after, like as they process this grief as well. It's not just speculated evidence. You actually have that feedback directly from the families on telling you how much this meant to them.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously we don't reach out to families. And a lot of families, after their child passed away, they will come back to the hospital to say goodbye because, obviously we were there for the most significant moment of their lives and most traumatic moments. A lot of the time, a lot of families being so kind that they want to say their goodbye, but also express their gratitude. And that's when we often get feedbacks from families. And seeing the joy and peace and in their face just speaks volume. And a lot of the time in music therapy, we offer the parents whether, if they would like to video on their phone and record it on their phone, they're very welcome to. And a lot of times when parents come and say goodbye, they'll show all the past videos. Look at this, he was so happy here when he was singing with you and he was kicking his legs to play the bells. And you can see that you have left a musical legacy for these parents to remember their child in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in being involved in such a heavy field, but euphoric one as well, because you are absolutely contributing to these families. What encouragement would you have for people that are feeling like the daunting mission of wanting to help children, but feeling weighed down by the monumental mission? It might be in therapy, but it might be just be in education.
I think that, obviously know your strength. It's important, and know your weakness as well. Everyone plays a part in doing what suits them. For me, it's music therapy and palliative care.
Yeah.
But you don't have to play in the same game. There are lots of other areas and other children that I don't want to say need help, but need you to empathize their life. And I think it's finding the right button that clicks with you.
Find your why. Not sure if you're exposed to this, but a question that comes to mind is, how do you support someone to deal with a death? Like, even from a sibling, there may be siblings involved and children understanding that. Is that something you're involved with the families and as well?
Yeah, we're very lucky that obviously, because working in a large hospital, we have a team of palliative care practitioners. We've got occupational therapists, the speech pathologist, the doctors, nurses, everyone plays part to support the family. So you definitely work with siblings, trying to get them to understand and do what they want in this journey of saying goodbye. Working with siblings and families are definitely part of what we offer. And often it's about whether they actually want to be using music as part of them understanding the journey of saying goodbye. So it's really dictated by the families. And I often have the privilege to support siblings to say goodbye in their ways. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the time working with children in palliative care, the patient itself may not be, when you arrive on the day, they may not be fully awake and ready to be engaged. And a lot of the time, you have other families in the room. So your role is also to supporting them and offer them, okay, well, you know, little patient is asleep. I see that 6-year-old sister and then 2-year-old brother is also here. Should we make music together? You know, what should we play for, you know, your brother who's sleeping in bed that are sick? And through that play, through the singing, through playing, making music together, often they would talk about other things that deep inside their heart as well. Sometimes as music therapists, we allow them to explore that further through our training. We also exposed to the elements of psychology and play therapy and childlike therapy, all those topics. So there are certain level of skills that we're able to handle, as well as supporting these children to explore their feelings. But there are times that also we can see that, okay, it's more than just allowing them to express. There's something more to that that's quite clinical. Then we refer them to psychologists or invite psychologists to come into our session to engage in a session together, so that it's not just me, but the psychologist actually using her skills to guide, to treat, or to explore what is happening with the siblings in regards to dealing with the patient's death or the patient's dying process.
Yeah. And for those people wanting to find out more, they may have ignited a little spark in them today about how to support families in this field. How would they go about finding out more about it?
I think it depends what that help looks like that you want to do. Obviously, in Queensland, the Queensland Children's Hospital, as well as the Hummingbird House, which is a hospice, they always look for volunteers. So that could be a first start. And if you want something deeper, then definitely encourage you to explore, you know, if it's music therapy, contact the association, the Australian Music Therapy Association, to find out more, you know, what it takes to be a music therapist. And maybe think about, you know, which direction do you want to take? Is it something that, you know, alongside of what you are doing now, you want to contribute, or whether you want to really take that seriously to be your career? I think starting the conversation is the first step for sure.
Yeah. And people can find your TED Talk, as I mentioned, in the show notes. But finally, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for all you do. It's an absolute integral time, a part of life. I was actually, I think I was year 4 or 5, and I was in hospital for meningitis, and I had a young man, because I was in intensive care unit. I had a young boy my age pass away next to me. And then, but to see the support that reached out to me that wasn't involved, I remember that, like, from that young age, and see the support that was given to his family around that. It's just so integral. So it really hits a note with me. So really appreciate all you do. Your TEDx talk is absolutely phenomenal, so beautiful. And just keep up this amazing work. And thanks for all you've done for pioneering this field as well for so long, and getting this out there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.